What would you do if your own daughter and son-in-law tried to steal your home and throw you into a cheap nursing facility? Betrayal doesn't cut deeper than this. If you've ever seen or lived through a story like this, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Stay with me until the end, because this real-life nightmare carries a lesson no one should ignore. What would you do if the very people you trusted most, the ones you raised, the ones who call you mom, turned your safe, quiet home into a place of secrets and betrayal? What would you do if, one morning, you opened your phone and discovered your life was nothing more than a plan on someone else's table? It was early spring in Denver, Colorado. The sun had just begun to creep through the blinds of my living room, casting stripes of gold across the hardwood floor. My neighborhood was peaceful, with neatly trimmed lawns and the faint sound of children's laughter echoing from a few houses down. For anyone driving past, my home looked like the picture of comfort worth over $500,000, a house built from 30 years of sacrifice as a nurse, a mother, and a woman who had survived more storms than I could count. But inside, the walls were holding something much darker. I had always been careful, organized, precise. Some even called me obsessive about paperwork. That house wasn't just a building, it was my entire life's labor. Every overtime shift I worked at the hospital, every missed holiday, every aching step home after a 12-hour shift, those sacrifices lived within its walls. I thought it would be my gift to Melissa, my only daughter, one day. A legacy of love, not just bricks and wood. Melissa Carter, my daughter, 38 years old. She had my brown eyes, but not my heart. She used to be a gentle girl, shy, the kind who hugged me at night when storms rattled the windows. But life, and perhaps her husband, had hardened her. Daniel Harris, my son-in-law. From the day he married Melissa, something about him made me uneasy. He smiled too easily, his voice carried too much charm, and he always spoke of opportunities, as if the world owed him something. I never fully trusted him, though I wanted to for Melissa's sake. And then there was me, Evelyn Carter. 68 years old, retired nurse, widow, and mother who had poured every ounce of love into a single child. I thought I was living the golden years surrounded by family. I thought wrong. It started with a repaired camera. Funny how fate works. My home surveillance system had been broken for weeks. Melissa and Daniel insisted I didn't need it fixed, said I was too paranoid, that this neighborhood is safe, Mom. But something in me, an old nurse's instinct, maybe refused to let it go. Quietly, I hired a technician. No one knew. That morning, curiosity nudged me. While sipping coffee, I opened the new app the technician installed on my phone. A live feed appeared, crystal clear. I expected to see an empty living room, maybe the dust dancing in the sunday. Instead, my heart froze. Melissa and Daniel were there, not at work, not at the grocery store. They were in my living room, rifling through my documents like scavengers. I zoomed in, my fingers trembling. On the coffee table lay my folders, my files, papers I always kept locked away in my desk drawer. My deed, my financial records, my will, everything. Melissa held a paper against the light from the window. Her voice, once soft and loving, sliced through me. Look at this, Daniel. The house is worth more than $500,000 according to the last appraisal. Richard was right. This is worth all the effort. Richard. The name hit me like cold water. Richard Coleman, the shady lawyer Daniel had met months ago at some networking event. I had brushed off my suspicions back then. Now, hearing his name, my stomach turned. Daniel's voice was sharp, impatient. We need the original deed, Melissa. Richard can't move forward without it. Mom keeps everything locked. She's meticulous, paranoid. Paranoid. A word they had whispered about me before, turning my caution into a flaw. My throat tightened. Then Melissa said the words that shattered me. Once we have the deed in our names, we can sell and move her into something smaller. A one-bedroom apartment will be enough for her last years. Her last years. My last years. Spoken like I wasn't even alive. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. Through the second camera, I watched Daniel enter my bedroom, opening drawer after drawer, his face twisted with frustration. Melissa stayed in the living room, her arms crossed, her patience thin. Albert, no. Richard gave us until Friday. she reminded him coldly. "Without the deed, we can't do anything, and without it, we'll keep living on the crumbs your mother gives us." Crumbs. That's what they called the $700 a month I had been giving them from my pension. Money I skipped doctor's visits to provide. Daniel sank into my favorite armchair, the same chair where Melissa used to curl up with bedtime stories. He leaned back and said the words that cut the deepest. "We'll pressure her. Tell her it's medical insurance paperwork, something urgent. She won't read it. She's confused lately." Confused, manipulation disguised as concern. They were crafting a narrative where I was the crazy, senile old woman. Melissa's smile turned cruel. "Perfect. Tomorrow we'll bring Richard's papers. She'll sign without asking questions." They gathered the documents sloppily, carelessly. The order I had always kept was gone. Daniel paused, his eyes drifting toward the camera. For a heartbeat, I thought he knew. I thought I was caught. But then he whispered, almost to himself, "I wish we didn't have to do this." For a flicker, hope sparked in me. Maybe the boy I once loved was still in there. But Melissa placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice dripping poison. "Think about our future, Daniel. Think about the kids we want. Are we going to depend on an old woman who gets more senile every day? This house is our chance." Daniel's expression hardened. Hope died. "You're right," he said coldly. "It's time to think about us." They left the room. I stayed frozen in the kitchen, phone in hand, my coffee untouched, my heart broken. For 38 years, I had raised Melissa. I had fed her, clothed her, worked double shifts so she could attend college, stayed up late when nightmares woke her. I had given her everything, even when I had nothing left to give. And now, the daughter I loved more than my own life had become the architect of my destruction. But there was one thing they didn't know, one secret advantage. Every word, every smile, every cruel whisper, they were all recorded. The cameras were my silent witnesses. I wasn't just an old woman anymore. I was a mother with proof. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen, I whispered into the quiet house, "You think I'm helpless, but you've already lost." And just as I gathered my courage, the door creaked open. Melissa's voice floated in from the hall. "Mom, are you awake?" My heart jolted. Did she know I had been watching? Did she hear me? I slid the phone face down on the table, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Yes, sweetheart, just finishing my coffee." But inside, one question thundered through my chest. Had my secret already been discovered? Have you ever looked into your child's eyes and wondered if you were staring at a stranger? What if the smile that once made you feel safe was now the mask of betrayal? The morning after I caught Melissa and Daniel tearing apart my living room felt unnervingly ordinary. Denver's sky was washed in pale blue, the spring air crisp and cool. The smell of toast and coffee drifted through the house, a false comfort, as if the home itself were trying to remind me of better days. But I knew what I had seen. The footage on my phone replayed over and over in my mind like a nightmare on a loop. My daughter and her husband had reduced me to a line item, a transaction, a signature away from disappearing into a one-bedroom apartment or worse, a nursing facility I hadn't chosen. And yet, as I stepped into the kitchen, there they were, Melissa, humming softly as she buttered toast, and Daniel, scrolling on his phone as if nothing in the world was wrong. Melissa Carter, my only child. She had once been my reason for working late shifts, for carrying patients twice my size when my back screamed in protest. She was my why for every sacrifice. And now, she was the very person dismantling the life I built. Daniel Harris, my son-in-law. He had perfected the art of the mask, polite in front of neighbors, smooth with his words, but always with that edge of calculation. I used to wonder if I was being unfair, suspicious without proof. Now, there was no doubt left. And then there was Richard Coleman, the man whose name I had overheard. Though not physically present, his shadow loomed over everything. A corrupt lawyer with the skills to forge and falsify, the puppeteer behind Melissa and Daniel's strings. Melissa poured me coffee, her voice gentle. "Morning, Mom. Did you sleep well?" I forced a smile, though inside, my pulse raced. Did she know I had watched? Did she sense the truth? "Yes, sweetheart," I lied. "Like a baby." Daniel glanced up briefly, his eyes narrowing. then quickly softening into that familiar facade. "We were thinking, Mom, maybe later today we could go over some paperwork, just some things to make sure everything is in order, for your security." My heart clenched. Here it was the trap in plain daylight. I stirred my coffee slowly, hiding the tremor in my hands. "Paperwork? What kind of paperwork?" Melissa's tone was syrupy sweet, but I could hear the steel underneath. "It's nothing complicated. Richard, he's a lawyer, Daniel knows, helped us draft some updates. Things about wills, medical insurance. It's just things people your age should have squared away." The folder appeared that afternoon, thick with papers stamped and highlighted, placed neatly on the dining table as though it were homework waiting for a signature. Melissa sat across from me, her eyes scanning my face, searching for weakness. Daniel hovered nearby, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. "Mom," Melissa began, "this is really just for your peace of mind. You don't need to read every detail, it's a lot of boring legal language. Just trust us." I picked up the first page. The font was small, lines crammed with jargon, but I forced myself to read. Words leapt out: transfer of rights, irrevocable power, assignment. My chest tightened. I looked up slowly. "So, if I sign this, you'd have the authority to make decisions for me? Medical, financial, even about this house?" Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Only if you couldn't handle things yourself, Evelyn. It's all to protect you." Melissa leaned forward, her voice soft but urgent. "Please, Mom, don't overthink it. It's for your future." Inside, rage and grief twisted together. For my future or yours? The room felt suffocating. My daughter, my Melissa, was trying to convince me to surrender my life in ink. I placed the pen they had offered back on the table. "I'd like to think about it," I said firmly. Melissa's smile faltered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mom," Melissa pressed, "Richard gave us an appointment tomorrow morning. If we don't bring these signed, we lose the chance. Don't you trust us?" There it was, the dagger hidden in the velvet glove. Trust, the very thing they had been dismantling behind my back. I looked into my daughter's pleading eyes and, for the first time, saw them for what they were, a performance. I leaned back, folding my arms. "Of course I trust you," I said with a calmness I didn't feel. "But I want to read these thoroughly first. I'm a slow reader, you know that." Melissa's mask cracked for a moment, her impatience flashing like lightning behind her eyes. Daniel jumped in, his voice sharper now. "It's over 20 pages, Evelyn. You'd never get through it. It's urgent." I met his gaze steadily. "Then it can wait one more day." The silence was heavy. Finally, Daniel slammed his palm against the table, making the coffee cups rattle. "Why are you making this so difficult?" Melissa quickly touched his arm, whispering, "Daniel, stop." But the damage was done. His mask had slipped. I gathered the papers in my hands and tucked them into the kitchen drawer. It was symbolic, but it sent a message. I was not surrendering. Melissa and Daniel exchanged glances, whispering furiously once I left the room. I retreated to my bedroom, phone in hand, and opened the camera app again. The microphones caught their low voices. "She's getting suspicious," Daniel hissed. "She won't sign if we push too hard," Melissa answered. "Then we change tactics. Pressure her another way. She depends on us financially, doesn't she?" "Exactly," Melissa said, her tone like ice. "We'll cut her off. Let her feel the weight of survival alone. She'll sign." My stomach churned. They were going to starve me of comfort. Piece by piece, they would strip away the life I had built until I bent to their will. I copied the recording, saved it to a hidden folder, and whispered to myself, "You think I've given you everything, but I still have something left my mind, and you'll regret underestimating me." That night, while the house grew quiet, I lay in bed listening to their muffled voices through the thin walls. They laughed softly, the laughter of conspirators certain of victory. And then I heard Melissa say one sentence that froze me to the bone. "2 weeks, Daniel, that's all it will take. 2 weeks, and she'll have no choice but to sign." I turned onto my side, staring into the darkness. 2 weeks. But the question that haunted me as sleep refused to come was this. What else were they willing to take from me to win? What if your own family started stripping away the little comforts you depend on, your healthcare, your freedom, your dignity, just to break your will? How far could you hold out before you gave in? Setting the scene. The following week was unlike any other. Denver's spring days looked bright from the outside, but inside my home the atmosphere had shifted into something cold, hostile, and calculated. My once peaceful kitchen, where laughter and the smell of cinnamon toast had filled the mornings, now felt like the headquarters of a silent war. Melissa and Daniel carried themselves with forced cheer, as though nothing was wrong. But I knew. Every fake smile, every soft word, was another brick in the wall they were building to trap me. They had set their 2-week timeline, and that meant the clock was already ticking. Melissa, my daughter, she wasn't the child who used to slip handmade cards under my pillow anymore. Now, she was calculating, almost robotic in her resolve. She spoke to me with gentle tones, but her eyes were colder than Denver's winter nights. Daniel, my son-in-law, if Melissa was the velvet glove, Daniel was the iron fist. He had no patience for pretense anymore. His voice, sharp as a whip, carried threats wrapped in politeness. And then there was me, Evelyn Carter, a 68-year-old widow who had survived double shifts in the ICU, raising a child alone, burying friends and family, and fighting to keep her life intact. I wasn't about to let them take me down with paperwork and lies. The first strike came quietly. That Monday afternoon, while I sat in my armchair with a book, Daniel walked into the living room. His words were calm, but his eyes gleamed with cruelty. "Mom, I called the insurance company this morning. We had to cancel your supplemental policy. It's too expensive, and honestly, unnecessary." My book slipped slightly in my lap. "You canceled my insurance?" Daniel shrugged. "We can't keep covering everything. You'll still have Medicare. That's enough." Melissa appeared in the doorway, nodding softly as if it were all reasonable. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll still help you if something urgent happens." But I knew the truth. Without that supplemental policy, I'd be forced to wait in overcrowded clinics or pay thousands out of pocket for specialists. My independence, my safety, had just been slashed with one phone call. The cuts kept coming, one by one, each sharper than the last. On Tuesday, Melissa announced that she and Daniel needed the car more often. "We'll handle groceries, Mom, but your doctor visits? You can take the bus or call a cab. It'll be good for you to get some fresh air." Fresh air. The words felt like a slap. At my age, carrying heavy grocery bags across icy sidewalks wasn't fresh air. It was a fall waiting to happen. By Wednesday, the cleaning lady who came twice a month was gone. "Too much of a luxury," Melissa explained with a smile. "You don't really need her." And by Thursday, Daniel made the final cut. "Mom, about those little extras we've been covering, like your prescriptions, your vitamins, even the heating bills, we just can't afford them anymore." Piece by piece, my comfort was dismantled. They weren't just saving money, they were starving me of stability, forcing me to see dependence as my only way out. That night, as I sat in the darkened living room, I overheard them in their bedroom through the camera microphone. Their voices were low, urgent. "She's stubborn," Daniel muttered. "But give it time. Without insurance, without the car, without support, she'll break." Melissa's reply was colder than anything I'd ever heard from her lips. "She'll sign, Daniel. She has no choice. A woman her age can't live without help for long." Her words cut deeper than a scalpel. To hear my daughter speak of me not as her mother, not as a person, but as a problem to be solved, it felt like death itself had brushed past me. My chest tightened with a mix of rage and sorrow, but as tears blurred my vision, one thought rose above the pain. They think I'm helpless, they think I'll fold, but they don't know who I really am. The next morning, I decided I would not simply endure, I would fight back, silently and carefully. I began documenting everything. Every phone call Daniel made, every expense they cut, every cruel whisper that echoed through the house. I kept copies on a hidden USB drive tucked into an old cookie tin in the pantry. I also emailed files to myself using an account Melissa and Daniel didn't know existed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of power return. Still, the strain was wearing on me. My body ached more than usual, the weight of fear pressing on my shoulders. At night, I would lie awake, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and wondering, would I survive 2 weeks of this siege? By the weekend, Melissa and Daniel grew bolder. They began leaving the fraudulent documents casually on the dining table, as if daring me to sign. Every time I walked past, Melissa would say softly, "It would be so much easier if you just trusted us, Mom." Easier for them, not for me. I smiled faintly, played my role, and replied, "I know, sweetheart. I'm just slow. Give me a little more time." But inside, I was already plotting my next move. The insurance, the car, the groceries, yes, they had stripped those from me. But they hadn't stripped away my mind, my determination, or my ability to outsmart them. And I knew just who I needed to call. That night, while Melissa and Daniel were out for a late-night errand, I locked myself in my room and dialed the number of the one person I still trusted, Dr. Susan Miller. Her voice on the other end was steady, reassuring. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "Susan, they're trying to take everything. My house, my freedom. They canceled my insurance. They're pressuring me to sign papers I don't understand. I need your help." There was silence for a moment. Then her voice firmed with resolve. "Listen carefully. I want you to come into my office first thing Monday morning. I'll run a full cognitive evaluation and document everything. If they're trying to paint you as paranoid or incompetent, we'll have proof that you're perfectly fine. Do you understand?" Relief washed over me, tears stinging my eyes. Yes, I understand." Susan's voice softened. "You're not alone, Evelyn. Not anymore." That night, I lay in bed, gripping the phone like a lifeline. For the first time in days, hope fluttered in my chest. Monday would be my turning point. But just as I began to drift towards sleep, I heard Daniel's voice through the wall, sharp and cutting. "Monday. We'll take her to Richard's office Monday. One way or another, she's signing." My heart froze. 2 plans, 2 Mondays, one mine, one theirs. The question that echoed in my mind as the night stretched on was terrifying. Whose plan would succeed first? Monday morning arrived, carrying the weight of 2 destinies. For Melissa and Daniel, it was the day they believed I would finally break and sign away my life. For me, it was the day I would prove that my mind, my dignity, and my freedom were still intact. The sky over Denver was sharp and clear, the kind of blue that almost dares you to believe in hope again. But inside my chest, fear and determination wrestled for dominance. As I slipped on my coat, my fingers trembled. I told Melissa I had a routine appointment with Dr. Miller. Nothing serious, just a checkup. She and Daniel exchanged quick glances, suspicious but silent. They didn't stop me. The drive to Dr. Miller's office was short, but every traffic light felt like an hour. When I finally walked into her clinic, her warm eyes met mine with a steadiness I desperately needed. She closed the door behind us, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and said, "Evelyn, whatever they're doing to you, we're going to put a stop to it today." She led me through test after test, short-term memory, problem-solving, orientation, even abstract reasoning. I repeated sequences of numbers backward, identified shapes, and answered questions that tested my grasp of time and place. It felt less like a medical checkup and more like standing before a jury, defending my sanity with every answer. 2 hours later, Dr. Miller leaned back in her chair, her expression soft but firm. "Evelyn, you are sharper than many people half your age. There is absolutely no evidence of dementia, paranoia, or decline. I'll write a full medical report today, officially stating that you are fully competent to make legal and financial decisions." Relief surged through me, hot and overwhelming, like a dam breaking after weeks of pressure. Tears welled up, but I wiped them quickly. I didn't want to appear fragile, not anymore. Then Dr. Miller leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I want you to talk to someone, a lawyer who specializes in elder protection. And I know a private investigator who can help you gather the evidence you'll need. Evelyn, if they're determined to push this, you'll need more than just a medical report. You'll need proof, hard proof." I nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "Whatever it takes, I can't let them win." By the time I returned home, Melissa and Daniel were waiting at the kitchen table, the thick folder of papers spread out like a trap. Melissa's smile was tight, brittle. "How was your appointment, Mom?" "It was fine," I answered casually, placing my purse on the counter. "The doctor said I'm perfectly healthy, just a little stress." Daniel's face flickered disappointment, then irritation. "Did you mention anything about the papers?" No, I replied, shaking my head. But the doctor said organizing paperwork could actually help with stress. Maybe we should look at them tomorrow, when I'm less tired. For a moment, their relief was almost visible. They believed they still had me cornered. But inside, I knew something they didn't. The tables were beginning to turn. That night, while they sat whispering in their bedroom, I dialed the number Dr. Miller had given me. Attorney Lisa Thompson answered, her voice brisk and professional. After hearing my story, she didn't hesitate. Mrs. Carter, this is elder abuse, financial coercion, attempted fraud, and manipulation. We'll stop them, but we need undeniable evidence. Do you think you can get them to admit their intentions again, this time while you record it? The thought chilled me, but my answer was steady. Yes, I've already been documenting them. I can do more. The following morning, Detective Mark Reynolds arrived at my door, disguised as a handyman. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp. We'll install hidden microphones and cameras in your main rooms, he explained, and you'll wear a small device just in case. All you need to do is keep them talking. Let them believe you're considering signing. The more they reveal, the stronger your case. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. By late afternoon, the house was wired. Melissa and Daniel had no idea that every whisper, every threat, every slip of the tongue would soon become evidence strong enough to shatter their plans. But their patience was running thin. That evening at dinner, Daniel pushed the papers across the table toward me. Evelyn, we've waited long enough. Richard says we can't delay anymore. If you don't sign soon, the opportunity is gone. Melissa reached for my hand, her voice dripping with false concern. Mom, please, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just trust us. We only want to protect you. I looked down at the papers, my face calm, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I picked up the pen, holding it just above the first line, and whispered, "Protect me? Or protect yourselves?" The silence that followed was electric. Melissa's smile faltered. Daniel's eyes narrowed. They didn't realize yet that every word, every second of that silence was being captured. I lowered the pen deliberately, setting it back on the table. "I'll think about it," I said. Daniel exhaled sharply, frustration darkening his features. Melissa forced a smile, but her hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. They thought I was still hesitating. What they didn't know was that I was buying time for the trap to close around them. Later that night, alone in my room, I opened the secure email Lisa had set up for me. I uploaded the day's recordings, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Watching the progress bar climb, I whispered to myself, "You thought I was the prey, but you've just walked into the cage." I turned off the light, ready to rest, when I heard the muffled sound of Daniel's voice through the wall. "She's stalling. Tomorrow we bring Richard here ourselves. We'll make her sign in front of him. No more waiting." Melissa's voice followed, sharp with determination. "And if she refuses?" Daniel's reply was like ice water down my spine. "Then we'll do whatever it takes to make her incapable of refusing." I lay still in the darkness, my breath shallow, my heart pounding. What did he mean by incapable? I barely slept that night. Daniel's words echoed in my head like thunder in a canyon. "We'll do whatever it takes to make her incapable of refusing." I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard it shook my chest. Every creak of the house made me think they were already moving, already plotting their next step. By morning, I forced myself to move with routine calm. I brewed coffee, buttered toast, and sat at the dining table with my mug, pretending it was just another ordinary Monday. But I could feel their eyes on me. Melissa's gaze was watchful, cold beneath her forced smile. Daniel barely spoke, his jaw clenched tight, as though silence itself was a weapon. The documents were already waiting on the table, stacked neatly, the pen resting across the top like a snake ready to strike. Daniel pushed them an inch closer to me. "Richard's coming by this afternoon," he said, his tone flat but sharp. "You'll sign everything in front of him." My throat tightened, but I forced myself to sip my coffee. "Richard," I repeated slowly. "The lawyer?" Melissa nodded, her voice sweet as honey masking arsenic. "Yes, Mom. He's been so kind to prepare everything. This way it will all be official and safe. We'll be there with you, every step of the way." I smiled faintly, careful to hide the fury burning in my chest. How thoughtful. They thought I was cornered, but in truth I was buying time. Hidden in my blouse was the microphone Detective Reynolds had given me. In the living room, in the hallway, even in the lamp on the dining table, cameras were quietly recording every word, every gesture. The day passed in slow, excruciating hours. Melissa busied herself in the kitchen, her movements sharp and restless. Daniel paced the hallway, making hushed phone calls. I caught words like deadline and payment and transfer, each one tightening the noose of their scheme. At noon, I excused myself to my room. With trembling hands, I checked the hidden device. The red light blinked steadily, capturing everything. I slipped it back under my blouse and whispered to myself, "Hold on, Evelyn, just a little longer." By 2 o'clock, the front doorbell rang. The sound was like a gunshot. Melissa hurried to open the door, her voice rising in exaggerated warmth. "Richard, come in. We've been waiting for you." A tall man in a gray suit stepped inside. His smile was polished, professional, but his eyes betrayed him shifty, calculating, too eager. He carried a leather briefcase, which he placed on the table beside the documents. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted me smoothly. "It's such a pleasure. Melissa and Daniel have told me all about you. Today we'll get everything settled, nice and easy." "Is that so?" I murmured, folding my hands on the table. He opened the briefcase, pulling out more papers official-looking, stamped, thick with legal jargon. "These are standard forms: power of attorney, property transfer, will updates, all for your protection." Protection. The word nearly made me laugh. Daniel leaned forward. "Mom, let's not waste time. Just sign where Richard points. This will secure everything for the future." I stared at the papers, feigning confusion, my voice steady but soft. "There are so many pages. I'd like to read them carefully first." Melissa's tone sharpened. "Mom, you don't need to. Richard explained it all to us already. He's a professional." I tilted my head, keeping my eyes on Richard. "And how much does this professionalism cost?" For a fraction of a second, his smile faltered. "Legal work always carries a fee, Mrs. Carter, but it's worth it for peace of mind." Daniel cut in quickly. "We've already taken care of it. Don't worry about the details." But I pressed on, my voice like a quiet blade. $25,000, isn't it? That's what you told Daniel you charge for making things look believable." The room froze. Melissa's hand twitched, her knuckles whitening around her glass. Daniel's eyes shot toward me, wide with alarm. Richard's polished smile cracked like glass under pressure. "Excuse me?" he asked carefully. I leaned back, forcing a small smile. "Oh, perhaps I misheard. After all, I'm just an old woman. Sometimes I get confused." But the damage was done. The cameras had caught every flicker of panic, every slip of control. Richard cleared his throat, shuffling the papers. "Let's not complicate things. Just a few signatures and we're done." Daniel pushed the pen into my hand. His voice was low, urgent. "Sign it, Mom. Now." The metal of the pen was cold against my fingers. My heart thundered, but I held the line. I looked straight into Daniel's eyes and whispered, "And if I don't?" Melissa's mask of sweetness shattered. She slammed her palm on the table, her voice sharp as a knife. "Then we'll make sure you have no choice. Do you think you can survive without us? Without our money? Without our help? You'll end up in some rundown nursing home, forgotten, alone. Is that what you want?" I met her fury with silence, my face calm though my body trembled. Slowly, I set the pen back on the table. "I'll think about it," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard gathered the papers back into his briefcase, irritation seeping into his polished tone. "We'll return tomorrow. Don't take too long, Mrs. Carter. Opportunities like this don't last forever." Melissa's eyes burned with rage. Daniel's jaw tightened. They had expected surrender. Instead, I had given them delay, and with every delay, the evidence grew stronger. When Richard left, slamming the door behind him, Melissa turned on me. "You're making a terrible mistake, Mom. You're risking everything." I smiled faintly, meeting her glare. "No, Melissa, I'm protecting everything." That night, In the safety of my locked room, I uploaded the recordings again. Richard's name, his fee, Melissa's threats, it was all there now, captured in crystal clarity. The case against them was growing like a mountain, but even as relief flickered, fear still coiled in my gut. Daniel's words from the night before haunted me, whatever it takes to make her incapable of refusing. What if signatures weren't the only thing they were after? The next morning, the tension in the house was unbearable. Melissa barely spoke, slamming cabinets as she moved through the kitchen. Daniel watched me with eyes like a predator studying prey. At breakfast, he finally broke the silence. "Richard's coming back tomorrow, and if you don't sign, Mom, well, let's just say you might not be able to stop us." I set down my fork, my voice steady though my heart hammered. "Is that a threat, Daniel?" He leaned forward, his smile cruel. "It's a promise." Melissa reached across the table, touching his arm as if to calm him, but her eyes told me everything. I was no longer dealing with family. I was living with enemies under my own roof. That evening, I received a quiet call from Detective Reynolds. "Mrs. Carter, we've reviewed the recordings. You've given us enough to pursue criminal charges. But we need one final piece, an undeniable confession that ties all of them together. Can you handle one more push?" My hand trembled around the phone, but my voice was clear. "Yes, I can." As I hung up, the house fell into a silence so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Melissa and Daniel's door creaked open. I heard Daniel's voice, low and dangerous, drifting down the hall. "She's too stubborn. If she won't sign tomorrow, we'll move to Plan B. She won't be able to resist once we make her weak enough." Melissa whispered back, her tone chilling. "Are you sure it'll work?" Daniel's reply was ice. "It has to. By tomorrow night, she won't have a choice." My blood ran cold. What did he mean by making me weak enough? The words clung to me like smoke. She won't have a choice once we make her weak enough. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the faint shadows across my ceiling, wondering what those words really meant. Were they planning to drug me? To stage some medical emergency? To isolate me until my will broke? Each possibility twisted my stomach tighter. Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, but it did nothing to chase away the unease that had rooted itself deep inside me. When I walked into the kitchen, Melissa and Daniel were already there, whispering in low voices that stopped the moment I appeared. Melissa turned to the sink, busying herself with the dishes. Daniel smiled at me, but it wasn't warmth, it was the smile of a wolf just before it lunges. "Morning, Mom," he said casually, pouring himself coffee. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied, forcing a steady voice. Inside, I felt as brittle as glass. The papers were back on the table. Richard was due that afternoon, and I knew this was their last push. Everything in their posture, their clipped tones, their narrowed eyes screamed of impatience. Plan B hovered between us like a storm cloud ready to break. I kept my hands folded neatly in my lap, the hidden microphone humming against my skin. "I've thought about the documents," I said softly. "But I want to be absolutely sure before I sign. What's the rush, really?" Melissa spun around, her face pale but her voice sharp. "The rush, Mom, is that opportunities don't last forever. If you care about your future, you'll sign today." Daniel leaned closer, his elbows on the table. "She's stalling again. You see it, don't you?" His eyes drilled into Melissa's, but his words were meant for me. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I looked at him calmly. "Harder for who?" The silence cut like a knife. Melissa dropped the plate into the sink with a clatter, the sound echoing through the tense kitchen. The rest of the morning dragged like a slow death. I moved quietly from room to room, pretending to dust the shelves, but inside I was listening, memorizing every sound. At one point, I heard the faint rattle of a bottle from their bedroom. Daniel's voice followed, low and urgent. "This will work. Just a few drops in her tea. She'll be groggy, confused, won't even know what she's signing." My knees nearly gave out beneath me. They weren't just planning to pressure me, they were planning to drug me. I retreated to my room, my heart slamming against my ribs. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, dialing Detective Reynolds. He answered on the second ring, his voice steady as stone. "Mrs. Carter? They're planning something," I whispered. "Something dangerous. I heard Daniel talking about putting drops in my tea to confuse me." There was a pause. Then Reynolds' voice sharpened. "You need to stay calm. We'll move sooner than expected. Can you stall them if Richard arrives?" "I'll try," I breathed. "You're not alone, Evelyn. Remember that." When I hung up, tears blurred my eyes. For weeks I had felt isolated, caged with predators. Now, at least, I knew someone on the outside was preparing to strike. But could they act in time? By 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt into my throat. Melissa hurried to greet Richard, her voice unnaturally cheerful. Daniel followed, shaking the lawyer's hand firmly. They led him into the dining room, the briefcase hitting the table with a heavy thud. Richard smiled at me, polished as always. "Mrs. Carter, let's finalize this today. Just a few signatures, and everything will be secure." Secure for them. I sat down slowly, my fingers brushing the hidden microphone clipped inside my blouse. "Richard, I appreciate your effort, but I've been thinking, perhaps another lawyer should review these first. Someone impartial." Melissa's face tightened. "Mom, we've talked about this." Daniel's voice hardened. "You don't need another lawyer. You have us." "I just don't understand why there's so much urgency," I continued, keeping my voice calm, even as fear gnawed at me. "Surely if this is all legitimate, there's no harm in waiting a few more days." Richard cleared his throat, flipping through the papers. "Mrs. Carter, delays can complicate things. Best to sign now." Melissa slid a steaming cup of tea toward me, her eyes locked on mine. "Here, Mom, drink something warm. It'll help you relax before signing." My hand hovered over the cup. The faint herbal scent drifted upward, masking something bitter underneath. My stomach twisted. "I'll drink it later," I said smoothly, pushing the cup an inch aside. "I don't like my tea going cold." Daniel's jaw clenched. He knew I had sensed something. "Mom," Melissa said sharply, "you're making this so much harder than it has to be. You're tired, you're confused. Just trust us." I leaned forward, my voice steady but edged with steel. "I am tired of being treated like I don't know what's happening. I hear you whispering. I know what you're doing." Their eyes widened, panic flashing across their faces before they quickly smoothed it away. But the microphone had caught it. Every flicker, every pause, every word. Richard shifted uncomfortably, snapping his briefcase shut. "Perhaps we should reschedule. It seems Mrs. Carter isn't ready." Melissa shot him a furious look. "No, we're doing this today." But Daniel held up a hand, his voice low. "She's not cooperating. We'll handle it another way." The room fell silent. The lawyer left shortly after, muttering about wasted time. Melissa and Daniel stood by the door, whispering heatedly. I couldn't catch every word, but I heard enough. Tonight, sedative, end this once and for all. Fear clawed at me, but beneath it burned something stronger. Resolve. I wouldn't drink their tea. I wouldn't let them weaken me, and I wouldn't let them win. That night, I locked my bedroom door, shoving a chair under the knob. I sat in the dark, phone clutched tight, every muscle tense. The house creaked with their footsteps, their murmured conversations drifting through the walls. At one point, I heard Daniel testing my doorknob, the rattle sending ice down my spine. I whispered into the phone, leaving a recorded message for Reynolds. "They're planning something tonight. Please, hurry." Hours passed like days. The clock ticked past midnight, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. I tried to steady my breathing, to remind myself that help was coming. But every sound, every shadow made me flinch. Then came the soft scrape outside my door. A whisper. Melissa's voice, low and urgent. "Now." The knob twisted violently. The chair held, but my heart nearly burst from my chest. Daniel cursed under his breath. "She locked it. Damn it." Melissa hissed back. "We'll try again when she sleeps. She can't stay awake forever." Their footsteps retreated down the hall, but I knew they weren't giving up. They were waiting, biding their time, planning their next attempt. I sat rigid in my chair, staring at the door, the faint glow of the streetlight casting long shadows across the floor. My whole body trembled, but my mind stayed clear. I couldn't show weakness, not now. Morning would bring another battle, but the question tore through me like a knife as I clutched the phone in the dark. Would I still be alive to see it? The night I wedged that chair under the doorknob felt like it lasted an eternity. Sleep never came. My body ached from sitting upright, my eyes burned, and every faint sound in the house sent a jolt through me. The scrape of footsteps, the hush of voices outside my door, the soft metallic click of someone testing the knob again and again, it was a kind of torture, meant to wear me down. When the first gray light of dawn spilled across the carpet, I thought I might collapse from exhaustion, but I knew better. They were waiting for weakness, and I could not give it to them. By breakfast, I pulled myself together as best I could. My hair was messy, my hands shook as I buttered a slice of toast, but my voice remained steady. Melissa placed a steaming mug of tea in front of me. She smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed her. "Drink up, Mom. You need your strength." I pushed the cup back toward her. "Why don't you have it instead?" Her smile faltered. Daniel's eyes narrowed. The silence stretched between us like a live wire. "I don't feel like tea this morning," I added lightly, stabbing at my toast. "Coffee is enough." Melissa pushed the cup aside, her movements stiff. Daniel muttered something under his breath and stood abruptly. "Richard's coming again this afternoon. This time, Mom, you'll sign. No more games." I lifted my gaze, meeting his with quiet steel. "We'll see." When they left the kitchen, whispering furiously to each other, I slipped back into my room and locked the door. My fingers shook as I dialed Detective Reynolds. He answered almost instantly, his voice taut. "We've been monitoring the audio you sent. The mention of sedatives was clear. We're preparing a warrant, but we need them to make one more direct attempt, something irrefutable. Can you manage another day?" My stomach clenched. Another day in this cage, another day under their eyes, with poison in my tea and forged papers on the table, but I had survived worse. "Yes," I whispered, "I'll manage. Stay strong, Mrs. Carter. By tomorrow, this will be over." The day crawled forward, each hour heavier than the last. Melissa hovered near me constantly, offering drinks, snacks, little things meant to seem kind but laced with menace. Daniel grew more restless, pacing the halls, making angry phone calls I couldn't fully hear. At noon, Richard returned. His polished shoes clicked against the hardwood, his briefcase snapping open like the jaws of a trap. He laid the documents out again, the pen gleaming like a blade. "Mrs. Carter, let's make this simple. Sign here, here, and here. It's for your protection." I folded my hands neatly. "Richard, forgive me, but I'd like my own lawyer to review these first." Melissa's face twisted with frustration. "Mom, enough! You're being stubborn for no reason. We're trying to help you." I tilted my head, my voice soft but unyielding. "Help me, or help yourselves." The silence was sharp, cutting through the air. Richard cleared his throat, glancing uneasily at Melissa and Daniel. "Perhaps we should—" "No!" Daniel snapped, slamming his fist on the table. "We do this now. Mom, pick up the pen." I didn't move. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest, but I kept my face calm. "And if I don't?" His jaw tightened, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Then you won't like the alternative." Melissa reached for my hand, her fingers cold and stiff. "Please, Mom, don't make us do this the hard way." I pulled my hand back, steadying my voice. "I'm not signing." The storm broke. Daniel cursed, shoving back his chair. Richard stood abruptly, snapping his briefcase shut. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered, edging toward the door. "I don't want any part of it." Melissa's voice sharpened. "You're not leaving. We still need you." But Richard ignored her, pushing past and slamming the door behind him. The house shook with the sound, leaving the three of us in suffocating silence. Daniel turned slowly toward me, his face red with fury. "You've ruined everything." Melissa's chest heaved, her hands clenched at her sides. "We gave you every chance, Mom. Every chance to make this easy. Now you've left us no choice." I stood, forcing myself to stay tall, though my legs trembled. "No choice but what?" Daniel's eyes glittered with rage. "Plan B." He stormed down the hall, Melissa trailing after him. I heard drawers slamming, cupboards opening. My breath caught. I bolted to my room, locking the door, heart racing. I pressed the phone to my ear, calling Reynolds again, my voice shaking. "They're planning something right now. Please, hurry." "We're on our way," he said firmly. "Stay safe. Don't eat or drink anything. Don't open that door until we arrive." Minutes felt like hours. I sat on the bed, clutching the phone, every muscle in my body rigid. Then came the sound footsteps outside my door, heavier this time. Daniel's voice, low and furious. She locked it again. We'll break it down if we have to. Melissa's voice, sharp and cold. Not yet. Wait until she sleeps, then it'll be easy. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. My body trembled uncontrollably. They were escalating, and I didn't know if Reynolds could reach me before they did. When their footsteps finally retreated, I slumped back against the wall, tears streaming down my face. I whispered to myself over and over, just one more day. Hold on one more day. Evening settled heavy over the house. Melissa and Daniel moved like restless predators, circling me, their eyes watchful, their patience fraying. At dinner, Melissa placed a bowl of soup in front of me, her voice sweet but brittle. Eat, Mom. You need your strength. I pushed the bowl aside. I'm not hungry. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. Eat! The sound echoed, but I stayed still. No. His face twisted with rage. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, but then he pulled back, his breathing ragged, muttering under his breath. Melissa reached for him, her voice soothing but laced with venom. Not yet. Tonight. I left the table, retreating to my room once more. My body felt hollow, drained, but my mind stayed sharp. I uploaded the day's recordings to the secure account, my hands trembling. Their threats, their plans, even Daniel's explosion at dinner, it was all there, captured and saved. I whispered into the phone, leaving another message for Reynolds. If they try something tonight, I don't know if I can stop them. Please hurry. The house grew quiet as night settled in. Too quiet. I sat rigid in my chair, the door locked, the chair pressed against the knob. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric in the hallway sent shivers racing down my spine. Around midnight, I heard the soft scrape of metal against my lock. My heart seized. Daniel's whisper came through, low and harsh. She's still awake. We'll wait another hour. Melissa's voice followed, colder than ever. If she won't give us her signature, then we'll take her ability to refuse. By morning, she won't know her own name. My breath caught. Were they planning to drug me fully, to overdose me, to stage some mental collapse? The possibilities churned in my head like poison. I clutched the phone, my thumb hovering over Reynolds' number. But before I could dial, a new sound cut through the night, the faint rumble of a car engine pulling up outside. Headlights flashed briefly across the window. Melissa's voice hissed through the hallway. Who the hell is that at this hour? Daniel cursed under his breath. Check the window. I pressed myself against the door, heart hammering. Relief surged through me, but fear tangled with it. Was it Reynolds? Or Richard? Or someone even worse? Melissa's footsteps creaked across the floor as she peered through the blinds. Her sharp intake of breath carried down the hall. It's the police. Daniel's voice was a snarl. Damn it, she called them. She's been recording everything. My pulse raced as their footsteps thundered toward my room. Daniel pounded on the door, his voice furious, desperate. Mom, what did you do? The pounding shook the door, the chair beneath the knob rattling with each blow. My whole body trembled, torn between terror and relief. The cavalry had arrived, but so had the storm. The pounding grew louder, harder, each slam a violent reminder of the danger still right outside my door. Melissa's voice cut through, shrill and panicked. Open the door, Mom! If you think the police will save you, you're wrong! I pressed my back harder against the door, tears streaming, my heart racing. From outside, I heard voices firm, commanding, Denver police, open up! Melissa screamed Daniel's name. He cursed violently. Their footsteps crashed through the hall like thunder. And in that terrible moment, with police outside and my betrayers inside, one question screamed in my mind, sharp as a blade. Would the police reach me first, or would Daniel? The pounding on my door rattled the frame, each slam harder than the last. Daniel's voice was a roar. Mom, open this damn door now! Melissa's scream cut through the chaos. Don't let them in! If they see the papers, if they see what we planned, it's over! My hands trembled as I pressed my weight harder against the door. From outside the house, I heard the booming voices of authority, firm, commanding, unshakable. Denver Police Department, open the door immediately. For one breathless moment, everything collided their fury, my terror, the officers shouting from the porch. It was the sound of truth slamming into lies, of freedom colliding with captivity. Daniel's fists battered the door again. "What did you tell them, Mom?" I shouted back, my voice hoarse but strong. "Everything." Silence fell in the hallway. For the first time, they hesitated. Melissa's voice dropped to a hiss. "She's bluffing. She's old. She doesn't have proof." But Daniel wasn't so sure. I could hear it in his ragged breathing, in the way he cursed under his breath. The pounding from outside grew louder. "Open this door! Police, step aside or we will force entry!" Melissa shrieked. "Daniel, do something!" I pressed my ear to the door, my body trembling as I heard him bolt down the hall, Melissa trailing close behind. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. The sound of the front door opening, Melissa's voice shrill and fake sweet. "Officers, what's going on? There must be a misunderstanding." The officer's reply was sharp. "We received a report of elder abuse and coercion in this residence. Step aside." "I'm her daughter," Melissa cried. "She's confused. She called you because she's paranoid. She's not well." I pressed my fists to my chest, fury igniting in me. Even now, even with flashing lights outside, they were still clinging to their lie. I heard Daniel's voice next, deep and controlled, but fraying at the edges. "Officers, please. My mother-in-law's been struggling. She thinks we're against her. We're just trying to care for her." Care. The word made bile rise in my throat. There was the heavy thud of boots on the stairs, a firm knock on my locked door. "Mrs. Carter? This is Officer Bennett with Denver PD. Are you inside?" Tears sprang to my eyes. Relief flooded through me like light breaking a storm. Yes, I'm here. Are you safe, ma'am?" "No," I cried, my voice cracking. "They tried to drug me. They tried to force me to sign papers to steal my house. Please, help me." The officer's voice hardened. "Step back from the door, Mrs. Carter. We're coming in." I stumbled back, pressing against the far wall. Seconds later, the crash of splintering wood filled the air as the door burst open. 2 uniformed officers stormed inside, their presence solid, immovable, like a shield. "Are you hurt?" one asked, scanning me quickly. I shook my head, clutching my chest. "No, just shaken. Please don't let them near me." Another voice echoed from the hallway, Detective Reynolds. His familiar tone was calm, steady, like an anchor in the chaos. "Mrs. Carter, you did the right thing. We've got you now." I nodded, tears spilling freely. From downstairs, Melissa screamed again. "She's lying! She's manipulating you!" Daniel's voice erupted, angrier than ever. "This is our house, too. You can't take us out." Boots thundered down the stairs. Shouts erupted, hands where we can see them. Followed by Melissa sobbing, Daniel cursing violently, the metallic click of handcuffs snapping shut. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The officers escorted me carefully downstairs. Melissa and Daniel were pinned in the living room, both restrained, their faces twisted with fury and fear. Melissa's mascara streaked down her cheeks as she wailed, "Mom, please, tell them you're confused, tell them you didn't mean it." Daniel glared at me, venom dripping from his eyes. "You've ruined us." "For what? A house you'll die in alone?" I stood tall, my voice steady. "For my dignity, for my life, for the truth." Detective Reynolds laid a hand on my shoulder. "We've reviewed the recordings, Mrs. Carter. The threats, the forged documents, the mention of sedatives, it's all there. They'll be facing serious charges." Melissa shook her head violently. No, it's not true. Mom, you don't mean this. You're my mother." I looked at her, really looked at her, the daughter I had raised, the little girl who once pressed dandelions into my palm, now reduced to lies and greed. My voice was soft, but it carried through the room. "You stopped being my daughter the moment you saw me as an obstacle instead of your mother." Her sob broke the air, raw and guttural. Daniel yanked against the cuffs, his rage boiling over. "We'll fight this. You think they'll believe you? You're old, paranoid. Nobody will believe you." Detective Reynolds' voice cut him off like steel. "We already do." The officers led them out, their protests echoing down the hall, swallowed by the night. When the doors slammed shut behind them, silence filled the house. A silence that felt different, no longer suffocating, no longer hostile. It was peace, fragile but real. I sank into my armchair, my body trembling, my hands covering my face. For the first time in months, I was free. The next weeks blurred into hearings, paperwork, endless questions. But through it all, I stood steady. Doctor. Miller's report, the recordings, the hidden cameras, all of it painted the picture clear. Melissa and Daniel had plotted to steal my home, to strip away my freedom, to erase my voice. And now, the law would answer? In court, I faced them one last time. Melissa's eyes were hollow, ringed with regret. Daniel's jaw was tight, his arrogance slipping into fear. The judge's gavel fell, declaring them guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted elder abuse, and coercion. 18 months in prison, followed by rehabilitation programs. They were barred from any future claim to my estate, ordered to keep 500 feet away from me permanently. When the verdict was read, Melissa looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry." For a moment, a flicker of the child she once was surfaced. The child who used to clutch my hand in crowded stores, who once whispered secrets to me at bedtime. My heart twisted. But then I remembered the tea, the threats, the way she whispered about my last years like they were already numbered. I stood tall, my voice steady. "I hope one day you mean that." I turned and walked away. Months passed. My house, once filled with fear, now became a sanctuary again. Neighbors checked in, friends visited. I planted flowers in the garden, watched the sunrise with a cup of strong coffee, breathed deeply without fear of poisoned tea or forged signatures. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. Not the same as before, no, never the same, but stronger, sharper. I had learned that love, even from your own blood, can twist into something unrecognizable. And that survival sometimes means letting go of those you once loved most. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the Denver sky in shades of gold and rose, I sat in my armchair, the same one Daniel once threatened me from, and let the quiet wrap around me. My story was mine again. My home was mine again. My life was mine again. But sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I still hear echoes of that pounding on my door, Melissa's scream, Daniel's furious roar, and I wonder, if greed could twist love so completely once, could it ever return? Or had I truly lost my daughter forever? Stories like Evelyn Carter's remind us that life's most powerful lessons are not always wrapped in comfort. They often come through pain, betrayal, and survival. At its core, this story is not just about an elderly woman standing against her own daughter and son-in-law's deceit. It is about the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of dignity at every stage of life. The value here lies in courage. Evelyn teaches us that even in the face of manipulation, isolation, and fear, one can find the strength to resist. Age does not strip a person of wisdom, clarity, or the right to protect what they have worked for. Too often, society underestimates older adults, treating them as fragile or confused. But Evelyn's stand reminds us that experience sharpens awareness, and that truth, when paired with persistence, can outlast even the darkest betrayal. The story also underscores the meaning of trust and boundaries. Family is sacred, but it is not a free pass for exploitation. Love is proven by respect, not control, by protection, not coercion. Evelyn's choice to expose her own daughter is heartbreaking, yet it shows that protecting oneself is not selfish, it is necessary for survival. Most of all, this story reveals the importance of community and justice. Evelyn's allies, the doctor, the detective, the legal system became the lifeline that restored her freedom. It reminds us all that reaching out for help is not weakness, it is wisdom. In the end, Evelyn's journey speaks to anyone who has ever felt powerless. It tells us that dignity is worth defending, that truth can pierce through deception, and that healing begins the moment we refuse to be silent. Her story is not just hers, it is a call to all of us to value life, freedom, and self-respect above all else.